Hello, everybody. We are live, Kubefirst live. And you know what? It's the first live stream of 2024. So I guess it's in a right to say Happy New Year, everyone. I think we can still say it because that's the first live stream, but that's the furthest we can go, like 18th of January. Anyway, Happy New Year, everyone. We wish you the best. And we're so excited to be here. To be honest, like we started the 2024 live stream a little bit later than we used to do that every 2 weeks. We skipped like some holidays time, and I was missing that. I was missing those live stream because first, always a pleasure to spend more time with John and our guests. But you know what? Those live stream there have been a good source for me of learning stuff. Like most of the time, like sometimes I know what we're going to talk about, but something like today, I have no idea how we're gonna be able to do that. So I'm gonna be like any other people in the room and listening to John, who will teach us how to make that magic happen. So yeah, today we're gonna talk about using GitLab self-managed with Kubefirst. So a little bit of history on that. When John and Jared created Kubefirst, we were supporting GitLab self-managed as the first Git provider. And at some point, we added GitHub because, a lot of people use GitHub. And for different reasons, we decided to move from GitLab self-managed to the GitLab SaaS offering. Like we got a lot of requests about GitLab SaaS offering, and I think it was fitting a little bit also like better with the GitHub offering, and it was like just a way for us to move forward. Funny enough, I think we did that in the version 2.0, and right after we did the change, like before, like nobody were really asking about GitLab self-managed, and right after we did the change to the SaaS version, we started to have people that said like, "Hey, do you support GitLab self-managed or self-hosted or on-prem version?" And we're like, "Yeah, you know what? We used to, not
Yep.
anymore."
Yep. Yeah. No, those decisions are tough. Yeah, you're right though. It was a tough decision. We've been on self-managed GitLab forever. It's like you said, how Kubefirst started, and we love the ecosystem. For the longest time, we ran GitLab self-hosted on Omnibus GitLab, which is VM-oriented GitLab server. Omnibus is incredible. It was super stable for us for years and years and years. Really highly recommend. We at Kubefirst, we love Kubernetes like it's anyone's business, but the Omnibus VM oriented GitLab is really nice and super stable. Over the course of the last couple of years, GitLab has reinvested their energies into Kubernetes. And so today, we're going to show running self-hosted GitLab on Kubernetes, not the Omnibus implementation, but the Helm chart implementation. But yeah, you're right. It was a tough decision to go SaaS from self-hosted because we're self-hosted freaks. We love self-hosting software. Kubernetes makes running your own software, frankly, easier than running SaaS or managing SaaS accounts and extending your infrastructure to the outside world. Sometimes it's just easier if everything's in-house and you own all the rules and you are able to, secure those communication lines and stuff like that. But, because of our business being a GitOps from scratch platform, switching to SaaS made a lot of sense for us because the orchestration that's required to run a GitOps implementation when you don't yet have your GitOps repository or anything in Git anywhere, you don't even have a Git server yet, is a gigantic chicken and egg problem. And we were able to get rid of that by leaning on the SaaS implementation and drawing alignment between our GitHub and our GitLab story by leaning on the SaaS implementation of those two Git providers. But like you said, folks are asking, what about self-managing GitLab? And once you have a Kubefirst, it's actually pretty straightforward to do. There's a handful of steps, and we're going to walk through that today. But having a good starting point, like Kubefirst tries to do, it helps facilitate that transition away from SaaS and into the self-hosted ecosystem. So hoping the demo gods shine on us today. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong when you're, pulling out the Git guts of your GitOps ecosystem and swapping it with a different Git provider that's running in that same platform. There's some tricky bits in there, but excited to get into it a little bit.
That's gonna be. Yeah, I was going to say that's going to be an interesting live stream, because I'm old enough or been in tech for long enough that I've seen the part where when I started in tech, everything was on-prem or self-hosting. Everything, SaaS was not even a thing, and at some point we decided that we didn't want to manage anything, and we wanted to offload that work to other people, so we started to pay monthly fees to do that stuff. And now I feel we're back in the pendulum where people start again to want to self-host and have things on-prem. So that support right out of the bat, the self-managed version of GitLab, to show people how to do that. I think there's going to be an interesting live stream. And the other part that gets me excited is I was talking with a user this morning, and we're talking about being cloud agnostic and stuff like that. And I feel that even if right now it may not be straightforward, Kubefirst really make it easy for you to because it's GitOps based, to try to move from one cloud, your Kubernetes cluster, from one cloud to another. So I feel what we're going to show today is a preview about hey, it is your platform. Once you created your cluster, it is yours. You can do whatever you want to do. And one of the things you can do is if you want to use GitLab self-managed, you can do that. So we're going to show you how to do that today. And as John said, hopefully everything is going to go well. But for those of you that prefer also text-based, we're going to have a blog post also going step by step about what are we going to do in the video today. That's going to be published after the live stream, or by the end of this week. So it's not finalized yet, but it's soon to be finalized. And that's going to be a tutorial for you on how to do that. But as always, if you go through that adventure with us live, or watching the recording, or reading the blog article, if you need any help at some point, join our Slack community. We're going to be more than happy to help you do the transition. So on that note, I think we can start the journey and see where it goes.
All right, let's do it. This one's an exciting one. And while I go through this, for our GitHub users that maybe are using GitHub Enterprise and self-hosting their server on GitHub, we're not going to go through those individual steps, but philosophically and from an orchestration technique standpoint, it's very much the same as what we're going to be doing with GitLab here. I know most of our self-hosted Git server users are GitLab. GitLab has just a really vibrant self-hosting server ecosystem. So we're going to start there with the demo today. But if you were doing GitHub Enterprise and self-hosting your own GitHub server, the sequence of steps to transition out of SaaS and into your self-hosted one is very similar to what we're going to do here with GitLab. So to dive into this, we're going to start out with a Kubefirst install, just normal old GitLab oriented Kubefirst install. So in order to get to the screen that we're looking at here, basically what I did was I downloaded the latest Kubefirst. I just brew installed Kubefirst. The version that I'm running is version 2.3.7 for this demo. And on that version, you can run Kubefirst launch up, and that brings up this user interface at console.kubefirst.dev. You enter in a handful of fields about what cloud you want to install it to, what Git provider you want to use, and what DNS you want to hook it into. And then you hit this magic go button, and then this sequence starts of it installing all your tools and checking out your domain. It's going to create a GitOps repo for you in whatever Git provider you specified. And then it's going to create your Kubernetes cluster in your cloud, and then bootstrap it with all of these great management tools, including the Kubefirst application itself. And at the end, it shows you success. Your cluster is provisioned. You have this next button here, which I'm going to click for the first time. This cluster I created just literally like an hour ago. So you can have this exact same experience in about 20 minutes through a Kubefirst install. So I'm going to copy this password. This is the password to this KBot user that's like the initial root administrator for the platform, and also the account that does all of the automation within the Kubefirst platform. So when I copy that and hit open my Kubefirst console, you can see that it's now looking at Kubefirst whatever your domain is. So for my install, I attached it to the Kubefirst.tv domain. This could be your company.io. This could be whatever your domain is that you wanted to attach Kubefirst to. So mine, this is self-hosted. This isn't like a SaaS Kubefirst implementation or anything. This is self-hosted in my cloud, and I'm running in the Civo cloud for this example. This is my new management cluster. It was created just about an hour ago. And I'm going to hit login to Vault, rather login with Vault. And I'm going to give it KBot as my initial admin and paste that password that I copied from the last screen and sign in. And I secretly sort of hate these complicated passwords that they give you. And I don't like to live my life like that. So the very first thing I'm going to do is hop into Vault. And I'm just going to single sign in using that session that I just established. I'm going to go to access, user pass, and I'm going to edit my KBot password to something I can remember.
Which is also good because you just shown people the KBot password to cluster.
I know, that was risky business.
Everyone.
Risky business. I know. I love living on the edge like that, Fred.
Living on the edge, yeah.
So here's my KBot user. I'm now logged into Vault with my new password, and I'm going to hop into Argo CD. I do this every time I do a fresh installation. I always like to hop into Argo CD and just look at, and I'm glad I did. There's some red in here. There's not typically any red in here. It looks like the clusters are complaining about stuff. Let's take a quick look. We're not doing anything with cluster management today, so I'm not sure how concerned I am about this. Oh, and it's just because of the development environment and this.
So speaking of cluster management, while John is looking at that, if you are not new to Kubefirst, we implemented a proper cluster management with workload cluster that you can create physical and virtual cluster with the 2.3. So it was available on Civo right at the beginning, and recently with 2.3.7. We also had that functionality to DigitalOcean, and right now the engineering team, unless they're watching the live stream right now, they are working on doing the same with AWS. So I would say, good guess, maybe don't want to put pressure on the engineering team, but by the end of January, we should release a new version with the cluster management on AWS. So pretty sexy version of a product, if you ask me.
Yeah, definitely. And the reason this is red is because the Metaphor application, which is our sample application, it has to do a build and then publish and then deliver that to development, staging, and production. And I'm going to bet that when we look at the GitLab pipeline, for some reason, something wasn't ready somewhere. So when I ran my Kubefirst install, I attached it to this Kubefirst group in GitLab.com. This is GitLab.com. Whenever you see that, we're looking at the SaaS version of GitLab. And if I hop into Metaphor here and look at the pipelines, I bet, no, it's been delivered. So I'm not going to bore us with diagnosing something that's not relevant to the live stream, but under normal circumstances that would be clean, and I bet by the end of the show it will be. So in any event, let's go to the Kubefirst group for a second. So this group was completely empty when I ran a Kubefirst install against this GitLab group. And you can see that it's created two new subgroups, as well as a GitOps repository and a metaphor repository. So the metaphor repository is just a sample application. It's a React app that delivers to DevStage prod, shows how builds work, shows how Helm charts work, and integrations with things like Argo CD and Argo workflows and whatever else. And then there's an admins and a developers group, and it's just the KBot user that's in the admins group. And if we look at the GitOps repo here. And in fact, I think I'm going to clone this repo locally. Let me bring up my VS Code. Or here, let me bring up my terminal.
We're not, okay. I was going to say, we're not seeing what you're doing now.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. So, I'm going to cd to my home GitLab Kubefirst, and do I have anything? I do. We'll start from scratch and git clone the GitOps repo. So, and then let me open my VS Code. And this is my GitOps repo that is currently only in GitLab.com. Now, the very first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to open a pull request to create a new OIDC provider for our new GitLab server that we're about to create. So basically, any platform tool that you want to make available to your entire engineering team or to your admin group or to your developer group, there's a really easy way on the Kubefirst platform to create a new OIDC client so that that application can have single sign-on that's integrated with our identity provider that we've created for you in your new Vault instance. And to show how that works, all of the Terraform that is part of the Kubefirst platform will be in one of these 4 Terraform entry points. I'm going to go to the Vault one and go to OIDC clients. And you can see a pretty repeatable pattern here with Argo and Argo CD and console. That's the Kubefirst console. And we're going to want a new OIDC client that looks just like those.
Can you zoom the text just a little bit, please?
Yeah, thank you for keeping me on this there, Fred.
While you do that, we have a question from Modesir Mirza. Sorry. Hey guys, when will we be able to have multiple clusters in AWS for separate environments? By the end of January. So you just missed that. I think you joined right after I shared about that. But just to give you the information, we released the cluster management for CVO with 2.3, and with 2.3.7 we released it for DigitalOcean, and now the engineering team is working on the AWS implementation. So I would say by the end of the month, so by the end of January, or maybe, you know what, even before, we're going to release the cluster management with workload cluster, physical, virtual, but also those specific environments that you can use right now in CVO and DigitalOcean. So that's going to be available on AWS soon. So good news. Pretty excited about that. And yeah.
Yeah, great question. Excited to have cluster management operational on AWS for sure. So I'm copying basically the same exact content, except that the redirect URI is going to be different for each app that you implement single sign-on for. So this particular route here of users auth OpenID connect callback, this is a GitLab opinion. So in order to get this value, you have to go to the GitLab docs and figure out what their redirect URI is that you want to hook in to your Vault OIDC client. And that's really the only tricky bit that you have to get right. So I copied this from the blog that I have. And if I change this to kubefirst.tv, which is my demo domain that I'm using today. And let's create a new terminal and check out GitLab. And we're going to create a new merge request. And when we do this, we have the GitOps repository that we create for you automatically set up with a webhook that's going to send events to this tool on the platform called Atlantis. Atlantis is responsible for running the plans and applies of your Terraform changes in a way that's nice and integrated with your Git experience, whether that's GitLab or GitHub. So you can see that we have a pipeline running here. And if I click in this, I think you can even see the plan live as it runs. Yeah, you can. So here it's basically created a Terraform plan because we created a new OIDC client. And if I refresh this page here, you can see that it shows the plan in your GitLab merge request, or if you are a GitHub shop, it would do the same thing in your GitHub pull request. And it shows you what's going to change. So you can see with the pluses here that it's trying to add some stuff. It's going to create a new Vault generic secret. That's where we're going to keep our client ID and secret for the OIDC connection so that applications can pull that and use it for single sign-on. We'll get into those details in a sec. But the big takeaway here is make sure that you have 3 items to add and double check that you got your domain right on the redirect URI. And I like this plan, so I'm going to type Atlantis apply. And in just a sorry, Fred, I didn't mean to talk over you, but when I type Atlantis apply, Atlantis is going to say, okay, got it. We'll do a Terraform apply on your behalf, and then we'll put the results of it in this merge request. And if everything goes through smooth, then it'll automatically merge and close the pull request. So it's got a nice audit capability for your team so that you can always know what Terraform changes are happening and who did them.
And I should have let you talk because that is basically what I was going to say. Like this is the way we suggest people to apply like any Terraform plan to use Atlantis. It's more like should I say the GitOps way to do things. And just before you move forward with that, I want to also show another comment from Modesir. Even if it may not look like a positive comments, it took me a lot of tries and debugging to install on AWS. Fred helped me a lot. Oh, I did not even read that part, but a lot of things. I have also opened these issues on GitHub, so I feel like showing that comment show the type of company we are and the type of team we are. We really want to be transparent. Obviously, I think if I remember, you got a lot of core DNS issues that was on your site that you fixed. So happy about that. The other issues that you had with AWS was probably with the assume role. I cannot talk too much about the history, about why we decided to go that way, but I know we have an issue created where we want to simplify at some point the how we manage the credential and access to AWS to stop assuming an admin role. I think it was John. You can tell it like you're here, but the reasons why we do assume role.
Yeah, the long story short there, and know that the entire, if you look at the latest EKS module and latest EKS version, AWS is making some really nice changes to simplify this implementation for access to Kubernetes that historically, and including today on the Kubefirst platform, because we haven't yet upgraded to that latest version of EKS. But on the version of EKS that we're running, the way to gain access to Kubernetes is through this config map that's called AWS Auth that lives in Kubesystem. And AWS Auth by default is going to allow access to Kubernetes to whoever it was that created the Kubernetes cluster. So when you do a Kubefirst install, if you were just like an IAM user, for example, and you created a Kubefirst cluster, there's some risk that you would create that cluster and then leave the company that day, and some new admin would have to manage that Kubernetes cluster and would need to gain access. And if it was set up against your individual IAM role, then only that individual IAM user would have access to EKS. Obviously, if you have access, you can expand that AWS Auth config map to include more roles or more individual IAM users who you want to grant access. But there is this edge case of somebody creating a cluster, not granting anyone access, and then are they stuck? How do they get out of it? So we had an opinion that we put forward that as long as you always assume a role, then any individual IAM user can be granted role assumption permission to that role and gain access to that Kubernetes cluster. So we force people to use roles today, but that implementation's changing in the latest version of EKS. They're getting rid of the AWS Auth config map, and that's going to simplify a lot of things about access, and it's going to remove our hard requirement to force people to assume a role in order to create the cluster. It was just a rule that we superimposed on our users to get them out of trouble if they happen to create a cluster and then some new admin had to take that cluster over. We needed a way to be able to grant that new user access to that cluster. So that's the long story there.
Yeah, and the problem with that is that like the access can time out within the process, like depending on like when you assumed a role, when you started to create a cluster, how much time you take the cluster to be created. And on AWS, it is one of the cloud we support where it takes more time to create the full cluster because AWS. Like we need a lot more resources on AWS to create our Kubernetes cluster, but this is something that in the future, not with the next release, but like in the future, it's in the pipeline. At some point, we're going to make it a little bit better. Same thing with the issues that you suggested. They're pretty good. There were cases we never had before. So right now they're not in the they're in the backlog. They're not like a priority for now, but like I'm pretty sure as soon as we're gonna do a little more testing with AWS with the management cluster, we're probably gonna go on those issues. So Modesta was saying like understood, literally went through this in my last board. So the scenario that you mentioned, and I love the tool, love the concept, can't wait to test with AWS workload cluster. So by the end of January. And last question before I'll let you go back to the Atlantis supply that you just did. Modesta was also asking, can we have something like Sonar Cloud as a step in the GitOps pipeline? So I don't know that specific tool, but like you can add any code analysis tool to your GitOps repository. What's happened is that once you create your cluster, that GitOps repo lives in your GitLab SaaS, GitHub SaaS, or as we're going to do today on your GitLab self-managed. So you can have that specific tool or any other tools that will check any pull requests you have or any code that was previously commented to the repository. So it's yours. You can do what you want after that with the repository or the cluster.
Yeah. And I've seen that firsthand operational with Sonar Cloud specifically. So certainly in bounds. So we got our OIDC client, and Fred, there's going to be a little bit of dead time after we create the GitLab server. So let's, if we have more questions funneling in, let's hold off on those until we're waiting for certs. Yeah, no, it's all good. For the question. No, yeah, just if we get some more. Love the questions though, and we are going to have some dead time, so keep them coming. So we got our OIDC client. This thing's merged. Everyone's happy. I'm going to go git checkout main. And pull those now merged changes in. And that's good enough for us to now create a new GitLab server with OIDC with single sign-on for the IDP that's on the platform. So let's go. In fact, I'm going to steal the GitLab server content directly from the blog. And I hope to have this this video, this live stream embedded in this blog after we publish it. But let me copy this content, and I'm going to go to my new GitOps repo, and in clusters, you have a directory for each of the clusters that we create. We create the management cluster, or whatever you named your management cluster first, and then the development, staging, and production clusters are V clusters that we create automatically for you so that you can test out, V cluster isolation and stuff like that. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just copy this GitLab runner, paste it, change the name to just GitLab, and I'm going to take GitLab runner everything, boop, 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 and change that just to GitLab also. So this is going to expect some content in my management components GitLab directory. So let me go up to management components, and let's create a GitLab directory, folder GitLab. And let's copy some blog content into there. We're going to create a new YAML, new file, call it application.yaml, and paste. And when I look at this, almost everything won't need any adjustment. This is, you should certainly go to the GitLab Helm chart. Read their documentation. What I'm installing here is a pretty minimal implementation of GitLab. Pretty much every configuration that you have under the sun in GitLab is available through their Helm chart, and you can change all kinds of stuff, whether you want the registries turned on or off or whatever, which web servers you want to use, all kinds of cool stuff. But the one detail that I do need to call out is this hosts domain, and the format is whatever your domain is. It's not GitLab dot whatever your domain is. So just want to call that out. So the domain we're using here is kubefirst.tv, and by setting that, we're going to create a GitLab server that's at gitlab.kubefirst.tv. So just want to make sure that's clear to everybody. And so we have an application for the Helm chart. And then we also have kind of a complicated config map external secret implementation. The external secret needs to pull the OIDC GitLab, client ID, and client secret out of Vault. So if we take a look at that real quick, if you hop into your Vault cluster and go up to secrets, then you'll find that we have an OIDC folder in here. And it starts out with just 3 of these, but because we ran that Atlantis apply just a moment ago, it created a 4th one in GitLab, created just a little bit ago. And as you can see, we have a client ID and a client secret. And this external secret that we're defining here is going to pull those values out and turn them into a config map that has the details about the client ID and secret baked into it. So it's a little bit more complex because of the structure that GitLab required for giving them the client ID and secret. But this is the way to do an external secret via template, which is kind of a crafty way to deal with external secrets operator.
And the good news about that is that either the code's going to be available in the article, or even better, we are planning to add GitLab to the GitOps catalog, so people would be able to just click install, and that YAML file would appear in your GitOps repository. You probably would just have to either enter the proper domain name or modify it yourself, but we have a mechanism in GitOps catalog to be able for you to input a specific part of the YAML file that need to be customized. So it's going to be even easier for you to do that.
Yeah, great call out. So we have our 2 files changed. We have one that's just in the registry to say, hey, look for GitLab stuff in the GitLab folder. And then we created a GitLab folder with some stuff in it, an application, a config map, and an external secret. So I'm going to add that to the main branch. Oops. What did I do wrong there? Too many M's. And when I push that up, if we hop into Argo CD and we look for an app called the registry, and it's bothering me that those clusters are showing red during my live stream, so I'm going to get rid of that. In order to get rid of your extra clusters, all you have to do is go to clusters and comment it. I'm going to push that up too. Okay, so that'll be gone in a second. And then I'm going to hit refresh here. This is going to pull every 3 minutes, so you don't have to click that refresh, but I'm just expediting the process here. And you can see we have a new GitLab components. Retrying attempt 1. Thank you, Fred.
Is it also deploying GitLab right now, or it did not sing the right comment?
Yeah, it hasn't started that yet. Let's go back to the registry.
The pleasure live demo.
I know. Yeah, I think it's those clusters that the clusters run at sync wave number 0. So I think until we get through that, it's not going to get to the GitLab components, which is probably set up at like 10 or 30. GitLab we have set up. We have that set up at 60. I can also expedite the GitLab by jumping the sync wave to the front of the line. These sync wave integers can be 0 is the default. Anything that doesn't specify a sync wave will be on sync wave 0. But you can go negative or positive. And generally, when we do GitOps orchestration sync waves, we usually try to define, like, if there's 3 things that have to happen, and the first one has to happen first, and then second, and then third. We won't call those sync waves 1, 2, and 3 typically. We'll call those sync waves 10, 20, and 30. That gives you a little bit of extra room in case you want to squeeze something into the middle there. You can also go with negative numbers, and that'll jump a particular application to the front of the line when it tries to assess what it needs to do in order to execute Argo CD sync. So let me push that up and see if that helps.
I didn't know you can go negative. That's a good trick.
Yep. Yeah. GitOps sync wave orchestration is a fun little puzzle.
It is. Speaking of Argo CD, if you have the chance to be in Austin in February, I was looking at the date, I wasn't sure, February 20 and 21st, there's Civo Navigate, and myself, John, Jared's going to be there. And I was promoting that first because we think it's an awesome conference, but also because Speaking of Argo CD, I'm giving a talk on the second day of the conference about Argo CD sync wave. So that's interesting because I just learned something new that I will integrate in my talk. But yeah, if you're new to Argo CD, that should be a great 101 Argo CD 101 talk.
100%. Yep. So we've got GitLab coming up and off the ground now. You can see it created that config map for our template and then applied an external secret to be able to create our OIDC secrets. And now if we hop into GitLab here, this is the actual server that's going to be created in our management cluster. And it looks like this actually takes a little bit of time. It's an enormous Helm chart. I'm sure anybody that's been in tech or familiar with GitLab for long enough knows that GitLab far predates the existence of Kubernetes. And they're a very microservice-oriented Ruby on Rails shop. They have a ton of components in their ecosystem, and it was quite a bear for them to adopt Kubernetes just because of the vast number of microservices that all had to be bundled up into a single Helm chart and the orchestration. They had this omnibus implementation that it was just bulletproof. The omnibus GitLab that runs on a VM was used and abused for a decade before they tried to adopt Kubernetes. And over the course of the last couple of years, their Kubernetes Helm chart has come a really long way, but it is just a lot of pieces that are being added to your management cluster. So if you see, slow times of stuff starting, a lot of times that's a cause for panic, and you start looking at what's wrong. With GitLab specifically, give it a little bit of time to shake out all the details. There's a ton of subcharts, and there's a lot of Helm hooks to deal with the orchestration sequencing of which pieces have to start first, and then next, and then next. They have that all kind of orchestrated through these Helm syncs. So, if you see, and you'll also see stuff like this, like right now, Kaz is showing up in an unhealthy state, but that's not going to be its permanent state. This is not something that you have to look into. This is just waiting for other stuff to become available and healthy, and then it's through its own callback loop or crush loop back off. It's going to reattempt to start back up, and this time it will have its dependencies and it'll turn itself green. So yeah, a lot of work to say be patient and GitLab.
And I love that view because when I started to play a little more with Kubernetes and do installation, and like every time I was seeing something red, I was like, oh my god, something is wrong, and I was like stressing about it. I'm like, oh my god, my demo's not working. I'm not the most patient person on the planet Earth, and I learned to be a little more patient with things because there's with everything in tech, there's always a lot of things happening under the hood. And this is the case with even smaller Helm chart that do not install a lot of dependencies. You just need to give them time to do what they have to do. So yeah, that's pretty good. And during that time, we have one more question from our number one viewer today. What is there? Can we have more than one cluster for each environment, like one dev legacy and one dev new environment, and 5 production clusters in different regions on AWS? So first question, can we deploy service to specific cluster and not all prod EKS?
Yeah, so environments on Kubefirst, it's easiest to think of an environment like a namespace. And we are building environment management into our Kubefirst ecosystem, and our goal is to allow you a space where you can keep your applications for a particular, really it comes down to the DNS, frankly. Like if you have a develop blue and a develop green cluster and you want those to be live, you have decisions to make about how you're going to do DNS management to ingress applications into those, or are you only going to ingress to one of those clusters and do something like a multi-cluster service mesh to do service load balancing in a multi-cluster environment? If you're going to do DNS with multiple ingresses across multiple clusters, generally you want to have one higher level DNS as well for your vanity DNS, so that your URLs aren't like, develop blue or develop green. You want it to just be develop and it to load balance traffic across those two. So all that type of work, we're going to be establishing a application environment space so that you can define however many environments you want. And our goal is that when you create a new cluster, you can attach that cluster to the applications that are in that environment directory. So what that's to say is that, if you wanted dev blue to have your one application, and you wanted dev green to also have that same one application, and you needed them to be live, you'll have to do something else. You can have dev blue with a dev blue URL. You can have dev green with the dev green URL and domain. But in order to be live at the load balancer layer, you're going to have to do some kind of DNS management. You could do that via Terraform or via Crossplane. In fact, it would probably be a really good live stream for us, frankly, to sort of do some multi-cluster shenanigans and show some of the details about how to attach a new cluster to an old environment, or what it looks like when you want to have two clusters that are leveraging the same exact instance of an application, and how to deal with that from an Argo CD standpoint. The story's got a little bit of legs to it. It gets sort of nuanced and detailed really quick. But I think with a little bit of thought, we should be able to show a handful of common scenarios between active-active at the ingress layer, active-active at the service layer, or just the scenario of, I have a development cluster, I'm creating a new development cluster on the latest version of Kubernetes with all the latest versions of all the Kubefirst apps. And now I just want to move my apps from the old one to the new one. That's probably our most common scenario. And we have the mechanics for all of those. It's just not a very succinct, easy thing to describe without a little more engineering effort to fully flesh out what we want out of our environment and application management.
Actually, Modus recommended that we're using core DNS resolving to original DNS based on geolocation would fail over to your global cluster. So we need to have minimum deployment to 2 AKS.
Yeah, 100%. So the way that would work in my mind is you would need to name those clusters different names. We have a rule on Kubefirst with cluster management that each cluster has to have a globally distinct name. So maybe you call it development east and development west, or development blue, development green. And with each of those, you could choose to either have your applications be shared by those two clusters, or have individual copies of the directory structure for that cluster's apps, and have a second copy of those. And that gets into details about, when you update an app, do you only want to build and publish and set the desired state in one spot and have all the clusters light up from that detail? Or is there ever a scenario where you want one of your clusters to have a different version of the app than your other cluster? And it's really that decision point that drives the correct directory structure for your GitOps repo. But it's entirely doable. We've done it before at a bunch of shops.
Awesome. Seems like GitLab is in good shape.
Yeah, no, we're looking good. I think we have a clean ingress. It looks like we got our cert back. Let's give it a test and see what we got. If I go to GitLab .kubefirst.tv. Oh. All right, we got ourselves a brand new mint condition running in Kubernetes GitLab server. So let's, I've got a handful of things that we're going to have to do. The first thing we're going to have to do is log into this thing. And I told you already that we wanted to create an OIDC provider so that you could log in with Vault. And that's true. And if I were to click this, it is going to try to create my KBot user in this ecosystem with my credentials. The problem is that GitLab by default has a rule about people being able to sign up automatically into your GitLab server, and whether or not that requires approval from an administrator. And when GitLab installs from like mint condition, there's one user that GitLab comes with called root, and that is truly the only admin that you can log in with initially. So in order to get the password for the root user, this is a Civo cluster. So I'm going to get my kube config from Civo. We have docs on kubefirst.io, docs.kubefirst.io for how to get your kube config file for each one of the different clouds. So for Civo, you have to type Civo Kubernetes config management. They have a CLI called Civo. And I'm going to save that. I named my cluster management. That's why this word management is here. And when I hit save, now when I do k get pods -a, you can see that this thing is just a big old cluster with a whole bunch of resources, including a whole bunch of GitLab resources all of a sudden. So that's great news. So if I'm going to use K9s for secret collection. And I'm going to, you can just do colon namespaces and then, oops. And then pick your GitLab namespace. And in here, if you do secrets, you can see that there's a GitLab initial root password here. If I go down here and hit the X button, it'll give me my password, which I'll copy and then close. And then pop on over here.
I'm a big fan of like doing things as a terminal and like with command line stuff, but like K9s really made my life easier. Like instead, like I never remember like all the kubectl like commands and stuff. So
yeah, and then you got to base64 decode it and
exactly,
don't forget,
which I forget all the time. So like K9s is really a blessing.
Yeah. So I'm just pasting that base64 decoded secret into the password field here to sign in. And you can see I've got something that looks just like GitLab.com, except it's GitLab Kubefirst TV, and it's got nothing inside it. So that's great. Right up front, do pay careful attention to this warning and be mindful of this warning. If you're not careful about the way that you set up authentication into your GitLab server, you can accidentally misconfigure it in a way where any old schmo on the internet can find your GitLab server and then sign themselves up. And then if you have repositories in that in that private GitLab server, if you have repos in there that are set as public because you're only expecting your team in there, anyone that self-signs themselves into their GitLab server will have access to those repos. Maybe that's proprietary information for your company. So be careful and really think through any configuration changes that you make to the way people are allowed to sign up, what the restrictions are, what the allow lists are, what the deny lists are. And I'm going to hit acknowledge here, but I'm going to show you just real quick from a security standpoint. The section that we're talking through with this is in the admin area settings, general, I think, and then sign up restrictions. So this is the section that I really just want to make sure everybody keeps their guard up on and be very careful and test what happens in an incognito window for somebody that's trying to gain access to your GitLab server. That is a known thing that people in the world try to do in order to get your company secrets, is they'll just scan for GitLabs and find people that have misconfigurations on sign up. So be a pro with all of these settings, please. So with that said, I'll stay off my soapbox for the rest of the live stream, I promise. I have this set up right now so that any user that goes to GitLab Kubefirst TV can create an account. That's fine for right now because we're just getting off the ground. But you'll want to tend to these as you're onboarding your team and getting things set up permanently. You'll want to really compress what the rules are for how people gain access to the system. The end result, once you have OIDC and everything, is that people should just be able to only use OIDC in order to log into GitLab. And as long as they're only using OIDC, it's only people that are in your vault that are allowed access to your GitLab. And that's the right security posture to drive toward. So with that said, let's go back to, what are we doing next, Fred? Let's go.
Because now we have GitLab running self-managed, but it's not integrated within Kubefirst. So
yeah, it's a really good point. So so I'm going to turn this require admin approval off for signups for this demo. And if I go, where's save? If I go to users right now, we should find that there's just the single user. So if I go and let's not mess around with the KBot user right now. Let's get to the GitOps pieces. So first thing that we're going to want to do is go to GitLab and then groups. And there's no groups initially. Now, when you just went through the SaaS install of Kubefirst against GitLab.com, you had to specify the name of a group to attach the GitOps repo to, and the admin group, and the developers group, and the metaphor repo. We don't have one of those over here, and we need one because Kubefirst requires there to be a group. So we're going to create just a new group. I'm going to call mine the same thing that I attached it to in the first place, which was Kubefirst. And now I have a Kubefirst group in GitLab Kubefirst TV. I'm going to set it to internal. This way, people that I've granted access to the internal projects will have access to this repo. But if somebody accidentally misconfigures GitLab and allows people into the system that shouldn't have access to your repos, they'll still only be able to see the public repositories. So as a general principle, I always choose between private and internal as my two choices. You can choose public if you want a public-facing repository for some reason, like that doesn't even require sign-in. But generally speaking, people don't do that. So I'm going to create this group. And that's enough for me to have a GitOps repo, a metaphor repo, a developers group, and an admins group attached to this group. And I have some Terraform. The problem is that I ran the Terraform against GitLab.com instead of Kubefirst.tv. So let's fix that. Now, in order to fix that, we're going to do another not frequently talked about technique that we have on the Kubefirst platform, where you can actually run Terraform locally. Even though all we do all day is say, use Atlantis, use Crossplane, keep everything in Git, don't run stuff on your local host. There are operations where it's valuable to be able to run Terraform off your local host for importing purposes or whatever else. Maybe you're doing some experimentation or whatever. So for that, what I'm going to do, I have my GitOps repository already cloned to my local host, and I'm going to git pull just to make sure.
I know you were giving the warning because I was going to say something about it if you did not about running Terraform locally.
Yeah.
Don't
run it locally. It's not worth it. It's always worth it to have it all in the auditable system, I promise. So in this repository, we have a Terraform directory that we'll CD to. And in that directory, we also have a GitLab Terraform entry point. In fact, let me open this in VS Code. This is silly. So in Terraform, we have your cloud, your Git provider, your users, and your vault configuration. So we're going to go to GitLab. There's not too much going on in here. And we technically don't want to change any of this either. We just want to run this Terraform against a new Git provider instead of the old Git provider. Now, the Git configurations are housed in Vault. So if we go to Vault, go to secret, you'll find this Atlantis secret in here, and it's got just a whole bunch of secrets for the platform. This is basically any Terraform that runs that needs a secret, it's going to source its secret from this Atlantis secret here. And that's really valuable to us right now because we're trying to run some Terraform on my local host, and I need to have all these secrets available in my local environment. Now, before I do that, there's a handful of changes that are going to be needed, and I'm going to refer to my blog here to outline what those are. So the first one is the Atlantis GitLab hostname. Mm-hmm. So if we go to Atlantis GitLab hostname and look at this guy, it's currently set to gitlab.com. I'm going to create a new version and change that to gitlab.kubefirst.tv. The next change that we need to make is to Atlantis. The GitLab token is needed in 3 spots. There's an Atlantis GitLab token, a GitLab token, and a TFR GitLab token. There's reasons for that. Just smile.
I was going to ask, and I was like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, it's another lengthy explanation, but there is one. So I'm gonna grab my. Oh well, I guess I need a GitLab token first. So let's go to my group at GitLab TV. And in settings, I can create an access token that has access only to the Kubefirst group here, which is really nice if you want to control which teams have which pats and you want to give an owner token to a teammate, but have that only be valuable from that group on down. Then you can set them up with a group and set your other teams up with different groups and have them all have their own pats and able to manage and rotate their own pats on their own accord. So it's a really nice setup. So I'm going to add a new token here, give it API access. I'm going to change the role to owner, call it KBot, and hit create. Now, when I create, it's going to give this to you and allow you to copy it one time and one time only. So if you lose this value, you're going to have to delete it and create a new one the same way. Not the end of the world, especially if you're using Vault. But I'm going to copy that and go to my tokens and replace the GitLab token here. There should be 3 of them. That's 1. GitLab token. Here's 2. And GitLab token 3. So I'm going to save that. Now I've got those in there, and there was a couple other values I needed. The owner group ID. This one's tricky to get the value of, and I'm sure there's a smarter way to do it, but I'm going to show you the way I know how to do it. So if you go to your Kubefirst group here, and then you hit edit, right as soon as you hit that little hamburger right there, it'll say what your group ID is. Every time you create a new group, it auto increments. Since this is self-hosted, it's a tiny little number like 2 or 3 or 4. When you're in GitLab SaaS at gitlab.com, this will be a number like 185,726. It's the same representative value. You just don't have thousands of groups in your self-hosted instance. So our value that we need is 2. And if I go back to Vault, I need to create one more version for which secret is it? It's the TFR owner group ID. So TFR owner group ID. And in GitLab SaaS, it was 7,400,000, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to change that to 2, and that's okay to do. Hit save. And lastly, we have a GitLab base URL. Let's grab that guy. And my blog was written against the wrong domain, so let me change GitOps biz to Kubefirst TV. Sorry, what was the secret? GitLab base URL. GitLab. Oh, right. I'm sorry. This one that I call out as a plus here is one that we need to add. The GitLab provider by default has a configuration that it's going to be set to gitlab.com/API v4. We need to override that because we're changing from the default to a self-hosted instance. So we're going to create a new secret in here. Go down to the bottom, just paste that there. And then we're going to grab a value that looks just like this, except has the right domain. Get rid of that space up front and change this to Kubefirst TV. Save that. And then there's only one other change that we need, which is in the GitLab runner. GitLab runner requires one configuration. It requires two variables, so don't get rid of the empty one. But one of them is very important, and it's how GitLab runner registers itself with your GitLab projects. Now in GitLab SaaS, they give you a registration token that you can use, but it's only good at gitlab.com. When you create your own instance, you'll need new registration tokens. So in order to get that value, I think we can go back to K9s. And in the GitLab secrets, there is a, I think it's this one, the GitLab runner secret. I gotta believe it is. Let's try.
I just realized something. You call this K9s, and I was saying like K9S, and I was like, that is so wrong. I know we disagree with kubectl, but that, for this one, I'm the one in the wrong. K9S instead of like K9s. I'm like, come on, Fred. I know English is not my first language, but there are some limits.
That's awesome. All right, so I'm going to copy that guy, get out of here, and then I'm going to create a new version of this and replace my old gitlab.com with my new and apparently much longer self-hosted version. I'll hit save. And now when the runner tries to attach itself to our new GitLab instance, it'll have the right registration code and everything should go through correctly. Now, let's get the GitOps, rather the whole Git Terraform ecosystem. Let's run the Terraform apply against our new space so that we can have a parallel environment in our new GitLab that we had in our old gitlab.com that Kubefirst set up for us during the installation process. In order to do that, I'm going to go, where am I right now? I'm in my GitLab Terraform directory in my GitOps repository. And there's this one command, and in fact, I'm going to have to get one more value in order to run that command. So let's hop back into K9s for a quick sec. And we're going to switch over to the Vault namespace. And then we're going to switch to secrets. And there's a Vault unseal secret here. And this has the root token. This is a very sensitive value for your stack. Keep it closely guarded. This is kind of your backdoor into Vault. If OIDC breaks down and all your users break down and there's just no way to get into Vault except through this Vault token, we keep that in the Vault unseal secret so that you always have a backdoor way to get into your Vault cluster if something goes sideways. And we need that to run this one command. So I've copied it to my clipboard. The command that we're trying to run is a Kubefirst command called Kubefirst Terraform setenv. And setenv requires a couple details. You need to give it a Vault token, and you need to give it a URL of which Vault instance you want to pull all of the secrets out of. So I'm going to point this at vault.kubefirst.tv, which is my new Vault instance that we were just looking at. And I'm basically saying connect as the root user, go to the Vault URL, and whatever values are in the Atlantis secret, drop that into a .env file in my current working directory. So when I run this,
when you do that, you may, like if you use Kubefirst before, you may have seen that step when you deprovision your cluster, because you need to be able after that to do terraform init, so terraform notice states of whatever resources you created to be able to terraform destroy. So now we're going to be like do the kind of like the same step, except we're not going to destroy stuff. We're going to create things.
Yep. So I'm not going to cat this EMV. It's got a handful of sensitive values that I don't want on screen, but basically everything that was in your Atlantis here, all of these environment variables are going to be in that .env file, and you can source it in order to get that content into your shell. So I'm going to do that source.env. Now my local terminal shell here has all of those environment variables pre-populated. And in order to run some Terraform, I can now Terraform init. And it's as if I was the Atlantis service account. So all of the environment variables that are available to the Atlantis pod are available in my local terminal shell here. And as soon as I close the shell, those environment variables are gone from my space, and we can get back into an environment where everything's up in the cloud and in your auditable system.
And the Terraform init that you've done right now, because you updated the URL in Vault for GitLab, like it was run within your new GitLab instance. So it's why like Terraform is like, hey, nothing exists yet.
Yeah, so when I run the plan here, this is basically because we have exactly like you said, because we have the okay, but
good thing you changed your password now.
I know, it gets you every time. So yeah, because we have for example the GitLab hostname now set to GitLab Kubefirst TV. This environment variable is leveraged by the GitLab Terraform provider. And if it has a value set, that's where it's going to look. So when we run a fresh plan from my terminal, it acts, even though we had already run this Terraform, we had run it against a different provider. So when we change the provider, it looks in the new space and says, I've got a whole bunch of new stuff that I need to create. There's nothing here. That's exactly what we want. There's 7 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy. If you followed the steps exactly as I just did, that's all you need to see in order to proceed forward. So I'm going to run Terraform apply. And when I look at my GitLab, that's the wrong instance. When I look at my GitLab Kubefirst TV, instead of this being empty, when I refresh, it's still going to be empty.
It's still going to be empty.
Oh, I forgot to hit yes. All right, so we'll do 3 Mississippi 2, 1, and refresh. And we should have some stuff. We do have some stuff. That's great news. But it's not quite good enough. GitOps is super empty. Metaphor, super empty. That's not going to get the job done. So you may recall at the start of this demo, I cloned this repo locally, and it has an origin of my original GitLab.com upstream Git remote. So in order to get this Git content into my new GitLab server, I basically have to add a new remote to my local Git repository, and then I can push up to that new remote and my local Git content will push up to my new gitlab.kubefirst.tv. So let's walk through what that looks like. I'm going to cheat from my blog again. And I've got some commands here that we can copy and at least get close to.
Actually, this is the step you just did.
Oh, it sure is. Thank you, Fred. There we go. Oh, and I'm glad we referenced the blog because I forgot an important step. We have to connect Argo CD to GitLab, but we'll do that in just a sec since we're already on one train of thought. So let's get that new remote created. We're going to do a git remote rename, renaming origin to old origin. That basically just pushes the gitlab.com over to the right a little bit. And then we're going to add a new origin, and it's going to be for whatever your domain is. In my case, it was Kubefirst TV. And then I should be able to git push set upstream to origin. And let me drop back a couple of directories just in case that matters. I don't think it does.
You should not.
And for this, I'm going to use root and a password that I undoubtedly don't have in my buffer anymore. So give me one quick sec.
And I assume with like GitLab or GitOps SaaS, you can at some point, had like SSH keys and not having to enter username and password. So
that's exactly right. Yep. So we're going to go and grab the root password. X copy.
Which is easy to remember. I don't know why you did not remember those.
No. All right, and that was enough to push the repository up to our new gitlab.kubefirst.tv instance. So if I go over here and go to GitOps, now instead of it being empty, it's got a whole bunch of stuff in it, which is great. That's exactly what we want. The problem is that a whole bunch of this stuff is wrong now. So we have we had this GitOps repo. And when we didn't install in the first place, we said, where do you want to go, GitHub or GitLab? You said GitLab. So we put all these URLs all throughout this repo are pointed at gitlab.com/ whatever your group is / GitOps, because there's all these self-references to the GitOps repo in the GitOps repo so that all your GitOps content knows where to go in order to get its GitOps configurations. So we have to change that. So in order to change that, it's pretty simple. You can just do a global replace of, if you do gitlab.com kubefirst, which is my group name. Whatever your group name is, you'll want to do the same thing. And you can globally replace gitlab.com kubefirst with
GitLab.kubefirst.tv.
Yeah. So we'll replace all of those. And then there's also a need to look for colon because there's Git protocol connections, like SSH protocol connections, and that follows a different convention than the way HTTP does. So you'll want to look for both of those and globally replace all of them. And then lastly, just to make the transition a little bit more easy to do, I'm going to take all of the Git at GitLabs and change them all over to HTTPS variations. That way I don't have to deal with creating a SSH key and getting that all set up with the user and whatever. I'm just going to shift it all over to HTTPS. You could absolutely keep it on SSH. You just have to take your SSH key from GitLab and copy it down, move it to your new one, and blah, blah, blah. It's not worth
And I
it.
assume someone who created the initial cluster, when you create a cluster, by default, we're going to use SSH to communicate with GitLab or GitHub. But there is an option when you can select HTTPS if for proxy security reasons, you cannot use SSH to work on your network. So I assume someone who had done that wouldn't have to replace
That's
that protocol.
exactly
It would
right.
have already been HTTPS.
It would have all been HTTPS. Yep. So I'll hit replace there. We got everything shifted over. There's a whole bunch of mods. And again, we are just going to push this to the new instance. And keep in mind that our current state is that Argo CD is only looking at GitLab.com. So all this stuff that we're doing in the new repository and making commits and pushing those changes to our new origin at gitlab.kubefirst.tv. Argo CD is paying attention to none of it. All it's looking at for now, exactly. All it's looking at is the old gitlab.com repository. So let's take these changes, git add git commit, shifting domains and protocol to HTTPS. Okay. I can't type that without a colon afterward. Git push. And again, we're only going to do the origin upstream, which is our new instance. And now if we were to look, for example, at registry, clusters, management, pick an app, any app, these are now pointed at HTTPS, gitlab.kubefirst.tv, only in this GitLab Kubefirst TV instance. If we went over to here, because I specified that I only want to update origin and not old origin, this content still has all the old stuff in it. Cluster.
I think you wouldn't even have to specify origin. I think if you do a git push without any flags, by default it's going to push only to origin.
To the one name origin. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Argo CD is looking at this old stuff, and this old stuff is wrong. We have all the stuff that is permanent and right for our new GitLab set up in the new GitLab repository. The last piece of this equation is connecting Argo CD to your new GitLab GitOps repository. And then once we have connectivity, we're going to update the old origin, the old gitlab.com version of the GitOps repo with this repo content that I have locally. When we do that, Argo CD is looking at the old gitlab.com, and the old gitlab.com says, for your config, look at gitlab.com. So when we replace that and we say, look at gitlab.kubefirst.tv for your configs, the registry is going to wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go to gitlab.com, get my configs. My configs say that I shouldn't be looking at gitlab.com. I should be looking at gitlab.kubefirst.tv. And it's then going to, with that new connection, point to the new GitLab Kubefirst.tv. The Kubefirst.tv configurations are correct and persist, that it should continue to look for configs at Kubefirst.tv. And then app by app by app, it's going to go through the sync waves and shift all of the configurations over from gitlab.com to Kubefirst.tv, at which point you're done with the old gitlab.com. We can trash it, and you're now on your self-hosted server. So let's see how it goes. This is where the demo gods are starting to stir.
Yeah, and we need to proceed like that because GitOps repositories are source of truth. So I assume, like in our Go CD, we could have like changed like where to find information, but it will go back to the initial gitlab.com. So if gitlab.com doesn't tell our Go CD to check on gitlab.kubefirst.tv, will never happen.
Yep, that's okay. Exactly right.
Awesome.
So
I'm learning. I'm learning.
let's see how it goes. This is the moment of truth, Fred. I'm nervous.
Yeah, the old last hour and a half was all about that, being able to
Yeah,
have our Go CD pointing on the self-managed GitLab.
that's right. So I'm certain there's a GitOps way to set these configurations, and I didn't have enough time to get that into the demo. I'm just going to click ops for a second if the audience will forgive me. Basically, if you go to settings repositories, you can connect a new repo, and we're going to do it via HTTPS, and the default project, it is a Git type. The repo URL, https gitlab.kubefirst tv /gitops.git. And we do need a username and password.
Obviously, if you do this at home, before doing all that, you would have probably created like a proper users and not use root anymore. But
Yeah,
it's a demo, so please bear with us.
Thank you for calling that out, Fred. So we're going to connect here. Failed. Why? HTTPS kubefirst.tv gitops.git.
Have the proper root password.
I'm struggling to believe it. Let's go here. Make sure that I copy clean.
I know the number of stars, like when a password is hidden, is not always proportional, but
it looked
like
off, didn't it?
You didn't have a lot of stars, so I mean, like, yeah, maybe there's something there.
All right, let's go back to the videotape.
Oh, Jared say maybe you're missing your group in the URL.
Oh, look at the big brain on my buddy Jared. That's exactly what it is. So let's try that one more time. So we're going to connect. It's going to be HTTPS, default project, repo URL, gitlab.kubefirst.tv / this time we'll do the Kubefirst group, and now we'll call it gitops.git, and we'll probably have a lot better success there. And connect. Hey, look at that success. I like that a lot. Thank you, Jared. Thanks for tuning in, Jared, too. I appreciate all you do for the company, buddy. So let's do, we got our connection. Now it's time, and we got our good permanent Git credential or configurations in our new GitOps repo. So it's ready to receive Argo CD action. We just have to wake it all up by pushing this stuff to the old repo. So let's do that. I'm going to do a git push setup stream. I think I called it old origin.
Yeah.
And just like that, we should have some new content in GitLab proper. If, for example, I refresh this page, it won't say git at GitLab. It'll say HTTPS. So this is ready to shake over. Argo CD is already looking at this repository for its configurations. And what that means is that if I go to the registry, I'm too slow. It's already waking up. And basically, this is already picked up that if I look at the app details of registry itself, this is looking at GitLab Kubefirst TV instead of GitLab.com. So the registry is our topmost app of apps. And all of the apps, all of the children apps of the registry will all follow in sequence. So registry woke up, pointed at GitLab.com. GitLab.com said, to get my configs, go to GitLab.KubefirstTV. It looked at Kubefirst TV. Kubefirst TV had the permanent configurations. for it and all its children. So as it goes through the sync waves, it's looking at GitLab.Kubefirst TV's registry instead of the old one. At this point, you could basically just, well, you would want to wait until this got fully synced and green all the way through. But once you were happy with the sync state of the registry, having gone through all of your applications and shifted everything over from GitLab.com to GitLab.Kubefirst TV or whatever your domain is, at that point, your old GitOps repo is useless to you and you can throw it away. Nothing's looking at it. And that's how you get off of SaaS and into your own self-managed.
And it should be fast, because now it's like it's syncing stuff and verifying that everything. Oh, actually, it's already done. It's verifying that like everything is okay, and because we did not really modify or install anything new, it's just like checking that like everything is still in place.
Yep. And I don't think a demo is any fun unless you have some proof at the end.
I was going to ask for that. I mean, like, you're a trusty, worthy person. But like I need that proof. I want to know that Argo CD is really looking at the new repository.
Yeah, let's do it. So in order to do that, I'm going to steal my Flappy K-Ray application YAML.
Which, if you were at KubeCon and you passed by our booth, you probably played that game.
You probably did.
A big old mix of fun and frustration, but like mostly fun with frustration.
That's right. That's right. So let's go to our new GitLab. This is the old GitLab com. I don't want that anymore. So I'm going to go to my GitOps repo, go to the registry, and let's add an app to prove that we're now fully registered and back in normal operational state for adding new apps and onboarding stuff onto the Kubefirst platform on your new self-hosted GitLab. So I'm going to go to clusters management and create a new file in here. We'll call this flappy kray.yaml. And I'm going to paste some stuff in here. Oops. And this Kubefirst com has to go. This is now Kubefirst.tv. And everything else about this should be static. So onboard.
So we're basically defining the new application we want to install. It's basically a Helm chart.
That's right. And when this again is just on Kubefirst TV, no tricks up my sleeve. And when we go to the registry app and hit refresh, this should wake up and say, we got a new thing that needs to be created. And let's watch that unfurl. Got a new deployment kicking.
Well, Flappy Kray is pretty fast to deploy, so
yeah.
After that, you need to wait for DNS, but like I would say,
yeah,
the deployment of the app is pretty fast.
So we got Flappy Kray running. That's going to help. And down here, we should have an ingress starting. And right now, anytime you add an ingress, the way that we have Cert Manager and external DNS set up, it's going to automatically recognize that your ingress has a new host name that hasn't been registered with the platform yet. So it's going to automatically create a host name in your Cloud or Cloudflare DNS hosted zone and point that DNS A record at your load balancer. And then Cert Manager is going to wake up and say, hey, we need a new TLS cert for this host name. It's going to request that from Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt is going to do an HTTP 01 verification, make sure that you are the owner of the domain. Once it verifies that, it's going to give you the cert. Sometimes it takes a while. It can take as much as 15 minutes. It's often very fast. We already got our certificate back for that one, for example. So that was pretty swift. And if I click this Flappy Kray ingress, look at that. We've got Flappy Kray.
Now I believe you. It's working on the self-managed GitLab.
Not bad, not bad. So that's pretty much all we wanted to show. There is more to the story. I want to be clear about that. What we showed here was pulling the Git guts out of a GitOps ecosystem, working through some local Terraform in order to get your scaffolding for Kubefirst reestablished in your new GitLab server, and then how to convince Argo CD that it should stop looking at its old GitOps ecosystem and start transitioning all the apps over to the new GitOps ecosystem. There's more to the story, though. We have a sample application called Metaphor. Metaphor, by default, will use some Argo workflows that we include in your management cluster so that you can build containers, publish Helm charts, and then do GitOps delivery to a development, staging, production environment. There are some things that you have to do to adjust Metaphor in order to accommodate your GitLab.Kubefirst.tv instead of GitLab.com. They're easy to find and relatively straightforward, but do want to call out that it's not the end of the story just because you have all your apps registered against your new GitOps repo. You may also have some things in your CI ecosystem that need to start interacting with the right version of your Metaphor repository in GitLab instead of in your new self-hosted GitLab instead of the old GitLab.com. So there's work involved. We'd be happy to do a live stream if anyone comments in the comments below that you'd like to see that continued part 2 of this this demo walkthrough. We'd be happy to do that for you. It might be straightforward enough that nobody cares to watch that for a half hour. So you guys can tell us, but it's pretty much what we wanted to show today. And surprisingly, the demo gods didn't show up. It's amazing.
Yeah, please don't tempt them by saying things like that. So no, amazing, good job, John. To be honest, I would not have been able to go through all the process, but knowing how Kubefirst works, it all made sense. And yes, we did a live stream for like more than 1 hour and a half. It's because John and I talked a lot and we explained every little bit because we thought it's important for you to understand what we are doing. But I'm pretty sure someone following, like mechanically following like the blog post, the tutorial step by step, it's going to be able probably to do that in about 30 minutes if like nothing goes wrong, I assume, because it's like it's a lot of steps, but it's kind of like straightforward too. Once someone laid down for you like you did in the video and the tutorial, so you know every like bits of like things you need to change. But that's a good exercise, and that really proved my point that in the end, yes, we created the GitOps folder repository for you, but it becomes your platform. So if you want to move it to GitLab self-hosted, you're good to go. And I would assume that like there's probably a way for you if you use any other like self-managed or self-host or on-prem Git server, the process would be close to the same process that we've been through right now with GitLab. So that's pretty cool. So I know, I think one of the last live stream last year, we tried a new formula, something quicker. We're not good at doing short live streaming, but you're there. You ask questions, you're listening to them. So I guess we bring value with those. So on that note, John, do you know what do cats and programmer have in common?
I don't know. What do cats and programmers have in common?
Which are two of the things that I like the most in life, developers and cats. But what do they have in common is when either one is unusually, I don't know why I struggle with that word. When either one is unusually happy and excited, it's because they found a bug. You don't have to laugh to just like
Fred,
be nice with me. I know those are dad jokes.
I am a professional dad and they hit me right in the heart. I love every last one of them. I hope they never stop. It's 2024 and we are already doing it this year. Let's do another full year of ending our live streams with some great zingers.
Putting
Um,
pressure on me. As I said in previous live stream, I'm not creating those one. I don't have any that joke creativity vibe in me. So I searched those on the internet. So I'm not the author of those. And I feel like every programmer slash developer jokes blog articles always list like most of the same, or the ones that like I need some visual and stuff. So if you have any developer jokes you like, please share them with me in the Slack community or on Twitter, because doing a live stream every 2 weeks for the rest of 2024 and trying to do those that jokes going to be interesting challenge, but I'm up to it. So awesome. And on that note, thanks for spending that amount of time with us. We are really happy. Always a fun time doing those live stream. And John, you always do an amazing job, but I feel like this one was like, wow, like what a live stream, going through all those steps. And I was not really able to help you at all. So I was like just following and listening and adding comments once in a while, but like great job on that one. And for everyone watching us, if you are trying to do that move, let us know how it goes. As we said at the beginning of the live stream, we also going to publish an article, basically a tutorial that goes step by step to what we've done in the video. So you're going to have the choice to watch the video, check the tutorial, the text-based tutorial, or do both. And if you have any issues, if you have any question about the process, again, join our Slack community and let us know, ask question. We are here to help you. So on that note, any last word for people watching the recording or being with us right now?
No, I appreciate you being my sidekick through it. I know it was a long one. Anyone that braved the entire video, grateful for your patience as we sort of walk through a complicated GitOps operation. And yeah, like Fred said, if you have any trouble as you're going through the steps, we will have a blog out that you can reference, and obviously our helping hands in Slack. We're happy to help out with anything, any jam you get in.
Wonderful. And you know, I've watched all the process, and I'm thinking like that, like the guy in me love to automate and script stuff, like doing like proper scripting. Like I could even probably make that process a little more automated and easy. So like if there is enough request for me to spend time doing something like that, that could be a fun side project.
Yeah, hopefully you won't have to. There, Alex Minshew in our community is tinkering with trying to get self-hosted GitLab as a native option for installations on Kubefirst. Unclear on exactly what timeline he's going to be able to get that implemented, but there is a community driven interest in building out the a native implementation, so you could just start on GitLab self-hosted if you needed to. So hopefully that's right around the corner. I don't want to apply any pressure, but I'm excited to get that kind of contribution from the community. So we'll see
amazing.
how that shakes out. Yeah,
That's amazing. The power of open source.
I know.
With those beautiful words, thanks everyone for joining or watching the recording, and we're gonna see each other in 2 weeks for the next Kubefirst Live. Have a good
Can't
one,
wait.
everybody.